Also, Bruins Toronto would be a phenomenal series.
Yeah.
Like, and it'd be drastic if the Bruins lost, but it'd be such a good, interesting series. Um, in terms of our jobs, it would be great. I also think on the ice, Toronto has shown no reason to think it's any different this year than past seasons. I don't think they've. I know they won a playoff round last year. I still don't think they are drastically different. I won't think that way until they have a legit two-way shutdown number one defenseman. And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prize Picks. Use promo code CLNS to get up to $100 back on any deposit up to $100. Make March Madness more fun. Make the NHL season more fun. Go use our friends over at Prize Picks. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Scott McLaughlin. Scott, what is up?
Not much, Evan. Well, and actually, a lot if you're a college fan, because we got Hockey East this weekend. But yeah, I'm doing well. How about you?
Good. We were talking off camera before we started. Big weekend. We got UMass and BC. Got BU and Maine. By the time this is out, the results might be done, and we know the championship game for Saturday. So it's an exciting time. I'm hoping for a good old UMass BU championship game. I think that'd be great. I think there might be fights in the Bruins press box if that's the case, but I think that it would still make for the best on ice product. No bias there. So I'm excited for that. Do you have any outlook? Do you have any predictions for this weekend?
I mean, I feel like the BU BC big showdown is what a lot of people are anticipating. We'll see if that actually happens, but it's felt like those teams are on a collision course for at least one, maybe two more big games. Like they could face Frozen Four national championship. Obviously
that would be awesome. By the way, a Frozen Four or a national championship matchup between those two,
and it would have to be national championship because I think they're pretty much locked in as the 1 and 2 seeds for NCAAs. So
that's right. That's right.
But yeah, I mean they had the big weekend series back in February that BC swept. Then BU got revenge in the first round of the Beanpot. And then of course Northeastern ruined the Beanpot for everyone. And just comes out of nowhere to win it again. But but that BU got their revenge on Northeastern in the Hockey's quarters, and we'll see. I do think BU and BC are going to meet at least one more time, probably this weekend. But we'll see. Maine and UMass are good teams too.
Yeah, I'm hoping for UMass for unbiased reasons, but I agree. A BC BU showdown to win Hockey East would be pretty damn cool. Every time we have you on this show, I always have to specify to the producer who you are, because remember that one time you came on and they had a totally different person in the graphic? Yeah. I was like, who is this?
Yeah, they had our Celtics guy, Justin Turpin, who's doing an awesome job. I feel like he's having a breakout season over on the Celtics beat. So, perfectly cool being compared to him, but definitely wasn't me though.
Yeah, it foreshadowed how big of a breakout year it was for him because it had him on there instead of you, which I remember seeing that graphic and being like, who is this? Like, this isn't Scott. I thought it'd be like the race car driver at least, like he actually, because there's a race car driver named Scott McLaughlin, right? So I thought maybe it'd be him, but at any rate, Thursday night, obviously there's a lot of attention on colleges, college hockey, college hoops, but the NHL rolls on. And on Thursday night, the Bruins fell to the Rangers 5-2 on Garden Ice, swept by the Rangers this year in the season series. And I think the biggest thing coming from that game, and two of those goals, it's hard to blame Swayman on. One went off to Bruskin in. There was a turnover that led to one of the other goals. He was screened on Panarin's first. But then you had like the Adam Fox shot that snipes over his glove. And, a common theme lately has been Swayman's kind of been trending down and Olmark's been trending up. Where are you at with that? I mean, I know it's fun to play this hypothetical. Like if the playoffs started today, you'd probably start Linus Olmark. But is this good or bad for the Bruins?
Well, it's not good in the sense that you'd prefer to just have them both playing great and both rolling. And then you just have to decide, do you rotate? Is it some other split of workload? Do you try to ride one? But that's the best problem to have is, hey, they're both playing great, and you're at least thinking you can't really go wrong with either. So having Swayman, hit this hiccup, this little slide, really kind of since the All-Star break. I know he had 2 big wins over Toronto, 2 really good performances against Toronto in there. But other than that, he was struggling a little before that. He's had 3 kind of subpar games since then, giving up 12 goals his last 3 games. So you don't want that. You don't want either of them struggling, because then it does kind of force you to probably just ride the other if that's the case, and doesn't leave you as much wiggle room. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this. Does Ullmark get 2 in a row at some point? Do you start to shift towards him just a little bit, or do they just keep the rotation going? Because they have seemed more open to using it in the playoffs all year. I think the one thing they're probably not going to do is, I don't think they're going to. Last year, they rotated right to the end of the regular season and then tried to ride Ullmark. And they really hadn't ridden him all season, other than a little stretch early in the year. I think he got 5 starts in a row in November of last year or something. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they feel like that was a mistake. If they're going to try to ride one guy, you got to get him ready before then. If you're going to rotate to the end, then you're going to use both guys. Again, it might not necessarily be a strict rotation, but maybe it's 2 starts for one guy, switch to the other, or 3 in a row, or whatever. But yeah, it's certainly throwing a wrench into it, because all year it looked like this was Swayman's year. He was going to be the game 1 starter. He was the all-star this season. And now it does feel like it's swung a little bit, where, right now as we record on March 22nd, you would have to say Ullmark's been the hotter hand recently.
Yeah, and I think you'd stick with that if the playoffs began today. And I think you nailed it with, it doesn't need to be a strict, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B throughout the playoffs. I think even look at last year with that Florida series. If you turn to Swayman in game 5 there, I think it's a different series. And I think if you even wanted to go, Ullmark for games 1 and 2 this year, and he's, really good in game 1 and he's okay in game 2, well, then you switch things when the series shifts to wherever it ends up shifting to, which we'll get to in a little bit, in games 3 and 4. And I think that that's okay. I don't think it has to be an even split. And I think if a guy has 2 shutouts in games 1 and 2, well, then you put him over there for game 3. I don't think you have to you stick to it exactly. But again, you even look at the next couple games for the Bruins: in Philly, in Florida, at Tampa, at Washington, at Nashville, at Carolina, back home against Florida, back home against Carolina. That's a tough stretch to end the season. And I think one of the big things is, how do you revitalize Jeremy Swayman throughout that stretch? You mentioned it. Do you go back and forth? Do you give Ullmark a couple games in a row to kind of let Jeremy Swayman reset? I think that's one of the tougher calls, is that this is not an easy stretch of games to have Jeremy Swayman get hot during, unless you can find a way to not get under his skin. But if you kind of start to lean towards Ullmark, does that potentially motivate a guy like Swayman?
Yeah, and I think one thing I would do in the immediate short term is, you could go back to Ullmark Saturday, right? It'd be his turn in the rotation anyways. I would want to give Ullmark Florida on Tuesday, which would that would make it 2 starts in a row. But knowing that Swayman's going to get Tampa the very next night on Wednesday. But the reason I would do that is Swayman has had most of the bigger games recently, Rangers, both Toronto games. I want to get Ullmark into one of those big games. He's played really well recently, but let's just be real. Ottawa, Montreal, Pittsburgh, not the toughest competition, not the highest of stakes. So get him down in Sunrise at Florida, big measuring stick game against the Panthers, and, give him that opportunity. Swayman's had that opportunity these last few weeks. I would like to see Ullmark get that kind of game.
I kind of wanted to see Olmark Thursday night against the Rangers. I wanted to see what he could have done in that spot. Big game, big team, 2 starts in a row. I thought that might be the opportunity to kind of reset Swayman or something like that, and that didn't really happen. And instead, as I mentioned, Swayman didn't really have the best game, although. Again, there were some breakdowns in front of him. I think that should be noted. Before we continue this conversation, a quick word from our friends over at Prize. Testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. It's skill-based, so if you watch a lot of hockey like I do, pick more or less the number of shots on goal a top player like Connor Bedard or Sidney Crosby might have in a game. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Now, back to the show. So it wasn't all bad on Thursday night. Wasn't all terrible. The sky's not fully falling. Bruins are still somehow the best team in the NHL points-wise. I can't wrap my head around it, but they still are. One good thing from Thursday night, Justin Brazeau continues to roll, scores a goal, continues to prove he should be an everyday NHL player. And for a long time, we've considered him for the fourth line. That's where he's been. When he came up, I think we all thought, all right, he'll be a good, solid fourth liner, big body, this and that. And Connor and I were talking about this on Poke the Bear the other day, and I think Thursday night kind of reinforced it. Probably deserves looks for the third line, too. I love the idea of a Frederic Geeky Brazeau line, at least to try, and you have kind of an interesting stretch of games coming up where you could do that. And potentially Maroon coming back in these next couple weeks. You traded for him. I would assume he's going to get kind of first dibs on a fourth line spot. What do you think about Brazeau potentially being a third line guy?
So I think they did it for one game, and I'm trying to remember exactly which one it was, but one of the games recently, he got a game with Geeky and Frederic, and they were very quiet and spent a lot of time in their own zone, and it didn't go very well. That's not to say it wouldn't go better next time. I mean, they have this stretch here where Vin Riemsdyk's been out dealing with an illness. We'll see if he gets back in Saturday. Sounds like Martian's probably going to play after a maintenance day Friday, but wasn't 100%. So, there could be some guys in and out. Like, I'm fine trying everything because I think this team has 9 top 9 forwards. And when you're looking for another option after that, you have to stretch. And I'm saying 9 top 9 forwards, counting James Van Riemsdyk when he gets healthy. Now, they have to get him going again, too, because even pre-illness, he had gone really quiet offensively. So, I don't mind giving him a look here and there. I don't expect it to stick. As much as I like the way Justin Brazeau's been playing, I do still think there's kind of a ceiling on his game for this season. He can still grow after this over the summer, but for this season, I'd be a little surprised if he ends up sticking in a third line role and playing it effectively. But for a game or two here and there, sure, and anything's worth a look because it's not like they're brimming with a ton of great options as far as top 9 forwards go.
I feel like they have a ton of bottom 6 forwards. That's my thing with this team is like you have so many guys who fit in somewhere in the bottom 6 that you look like even like a Danton Heinen who's fit in, up on that line with Zacha and Pastrnak. It's all great, but I mean, is Danton Heinen the long-term solution there on that line? Probably not. Although I did like, I don't know if you heard this the other day. Felger was asking, why don't I like David Pastrnak? And Craig Bedard was like, well, because he doesn't help he doesn't make his teammates better. And I said, well, that's interesting. David Pastrnak has 55 assists, his career high. He's a phenomenal passer, and he's turning Danton Heinen into a viable top 6 winger. I think he's doing just enough when it comes to making his teammates better.
Yeah, it's wild. It's a wild, absolutely wild take. Like,
Yeah, I appreciate
I
the
heard it,
wildness
but
of the take. I appreciate the wildness of the take. At any rate, I think Brazeau, the way he wins board battles, I think just, again, his puck play around the net is strong. I do, again, I have no basis to this other than I think if Frederick Geekie and Brazeau could be together for a couple games in a row, I'd be interested at least to see kind of what they can do in the offensive zone, being in there more and kind of, generating scoring chances from behind the net and things like that. So, I'd be interested in it. I agree with you. I don't think Brazeau is going to be a top 6 forward anytime soon, but I think for what he brings, guy who wins a lot of battles, good stick. Like, I think that all that stuff for a big guy is impressive. It's hard to knock him off the puck. I'd be curious because that Frederick Geekie Brazeau line could potentially be a physically big line. And I know we like to make fun of the people who always want, the big, tough hockey players things. But I think that in the playoffs, a line like that, if they develop some chemistry, could be interesting. I think Brazeau's played his way into that factor. One other thing I want to mention before we get to playoff matchups, our friends over at Factor Meals, Scott. You got to get on this Factor Meals wave. That's what you got to do, Scott. So quick word from our friends over at Factor. Let me tell you about my good friends over at Factor Meals. Eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. You'll have over 35 different options to choose from every week, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Also, there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day long. What are you waiting for? Get started today and get after your goals. 2-minute meals, fuel up fast with Factor's restaurant-quality meals that are ready to heat and eat whenever you are. Pancakes, smoothies, and more. If you're looking for fast, premium options with no cooking required, sign up and save. We've done the math. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. So head to factormeals.com/Bruins50 and use code Bruins50 to get 50% off. Again, that's code Bruins50 at factormeals.com/Bruins50 to get 50% off. Now, back to the show. So Scott, we're going to play a fun game of Would You Rather. You ready?
Right.
So this is it's like you're back in camp when you're, a young kid growing up and you're around the campfire and it's like, truth or dare, would you rather? So this is a tough one. I'm just saying it's a very tough question. Would you rather the Bruins finish second and play Toronto in the first round, or finish as the 1 seed and get the wild card team?
So I feel like that, to me, this sounds a little crazy because I think the Leafs are a better team than pretty much all those wild card teams. And yet, I think I'd rather finish second and face the Leafs for a couple of reasons. And one is that the Bruins have had the Leafs number this year. And while I don't think regular season series necessarily carry into the playoffs, there's something there. And there's the longer term scar tissue that Toronto has against Boston. Another reason is Toronto's been like the Bruins in that they've been pretty safe in a playoff spot for a while now. Probably aren't playing the most desperate of hockey down the stretch. Whoever gets those wildcard spots is going to be playing desperate hockey. They've had to raise their game for a month or two down the stretch just to make it. And you saw that last year with Florida, the edge that can kind of give a team that's, has already gotten to that level and is playing like every game's an elimination game, versus the Bruins who, tried to build energy and tried to approach it as, all right, we're going to treat these next 5 games as a series. And hey, we are going to go for the record because that's, a carrot to chase. And it still doesn't mimic playoff intensity. Like, it's just, you can try to fake it as much as you can try to fake it as much as you want, but it just you can't really do it. And Bruins have the same challenge this year. Even though they're not running away from everyone, you can say like, oh, they should try to beat up Florida for the 1 seed. Like, maybe that's something to play for, but it just doesn't register that way. Like, I don't think anyone actually believes that you're going to play, desperate playoff style hockey to try to be the 1 seed or to try to get the President's Trophy. Like, that just doesn't drive guys that way. So I think I would rather face the team that's in a similar situation, that isn't fighting for their lives down the stretch, and take a little pressure off yourself. Like, I don't believe in the President's Trophy curse. I don't think it's a thing, despite what happened last year. But I do think like pressure can be real, and I think if you're the 1 seed again and potentially the President's Trophy winner again, like there are going to be those questions of, hey, last year you guys fell in the first round. Like, what are you doing differently this time? How are you going to avoid that happening again and all that? So I would rather just ignore all that. Give me the 2 seed. That's fine.
Also, Bruins Toronto would be a phenomenal series.
Yeah.
Like, and it'd be drastic if the Bruins lost, but it'd be such a good, interesting series. In terms of our jobs, it would be great. I also think on the ice, Toronto has shown no reason to think it's any different this year than past seasons. I don't think I know they won a playoff round last year. I still don't think they are drastically different. I won't think that way until they have a legit 2-way shutdown number 1 defenseman. In net, same type of thing. I look at the wild card teams, right? And you nailed it with, these teams they're playing playoff hockey the last month and a half of the season. Tampa Bay, potentially, that is not an easy matchup. I know the Bruins have had their number in the regular season, but Tampa certainly had the number in the past in the postseason. You got, if you get a hot Vasilevsky, that's going to be a really difficult first round series. Detroit has their issues, but still, I mean, they would have to continue to get hot. I mean, they were in such a slump. They would have to be scorching hot going into the playoffs. Washington,
and Detroit's played the Bruins tough too. Like, that's been one of those teams that's just kind of like doesn't seem to be a great matchup for the Bruins.
No, and Washington, again, the Bruins, I know, had that no-show back in February against them. I know it's just regular season, but still. And they have been hot of late, despite really not great underlying numbers. And then the Islanders are kind of always a scary team when it comes to the playoffs. They're boring. Sorokin in net, Waugh behind the bench. Like, that's a team that could do some damage, especially against the Bruins. I think it goes back to this, like, last year when we were talking this time of year, it was like, well, it doesn't matter who the Bruins face in the first round. It matters who they play in the conference final and the Stanley Cup. And that roster was so good that there wasn't really a hole. You look at this Bruins roster and the goaltending seems not up in the air, but, guys going in different directions right now. You don't know what your third and fourth lines are yet. You do have some defensive troubles. They look more pedestrian. And that's not to say that they're bad and they're going to be automatically out in the first round, but it means that you'd rather face a team that you have a pretty good chance against in that first round rather than one of these hot wild card teams that could easily upset you. So I agree with you. I would rather them finish second, play Toronto in the first round. Yes, you might sacrifice home ice in the second round against a team like Florida. I'm okay with that. And again, just in terms of watchability, Bruins Leafs is good. Like, Bruins Leafs is peak, I think. Detroit and Washington are fun. Not really, but it's playoff hockey, but I still am not as into it as I would be if it was Toronto.
Yeah, for sure. Like, from that perspective, just the fan of the game, or media member looking for storylines, absolutely Toronto all day long. And I think a lot of Bruins fans actually probably agree with that too. Like, I think, you risk overlooking them a little. And as you mentioned, they did win a playoff series last year. So they at least got that monkey off their back, even though they got steamrolled by Florida the next round. But yeah, I think a lot of Bruins fans would take Toronto too. Like, I do think there's a sense that, they kind of have their number, and just the sheer entertainment factor and the fact that, like, the Bruins and their fans just aren't scared of that team, nor should they be. Like you said, there's still kind of the same questions there about defense and goaltending. Their depth isn't as good as it was last year up front. We know the superstars, and yes, any series you play against Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, John Tavares has had some good games against the Bruins, even though he's not the star he once was. You got to contend with that, and they'll have their games. Like, they'll put up some points, but I think the Bruins are a little deeper team. I would like the way that they can match up with their third and fourth lines. So I would definitely pick the Bruins to win that series. I don't think it'd be a pushover by any means, but that should be a winnable series.
I agree. But again, after last year, I'm not taking any opponent lightly come the postseason. So even the Maple Leafs, I won't even take the Maple Leafs lightly. Anyways, Scott, thank you so much for joining. What can the people look forward to from you over at EEI?
Well, we got Sunday skate going every Sunday morning, 9 to 11 a.m. We got skate podcasts dropping regularly, written coverage, WEEI.com. I'm going to be down in Florida next week, so I'll have some coverage from down there. Yeah, it's getting away for a week. The Bruins schedule worked out perfectly because they have like 3 days off leading up to those games and 3 days off after. So I'm going down, staying at my grandfather's, and making a week of it.
Hell yeah. Go off. You deserve it. You work hard. You've done a great job this year.
Thanks, Evan.
You deserve the vacation in Florida, even though you're going to be covering the games. So,
yeah.
That's awesome. But anyways, you can look forward to that. Go listen to the Skate Podcast. That's Scott McLaughlin. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.